Wow, pretty wild that the Harry Potter video that I made broke 1 million views. That's a pretty cool thing, and I'm really happy that it happened. But with such joy also comes an ounce of misery. That misery being that I, in that video, promised to review and consider Hogwarts Legacy if it ever managed to hit such a number. I'd kinda assumed that it would never really get to 1 million views, and so that promise was made in the understanding of never needing to be fulfilled, but now it kinda has to be. So I did it, okay? I perfectly and totally legally obtained a copy of Hogwarts Legacy, and I gave it my best shot to play through it, and consider the elements within it, and how that tied into the wider understanding of the wizarding world that I got from creating a 10-hour video on it. To answer the first and immediate question that I'm sure comes to mind, namely, do you need to go and watch that whole thing as a primer for this video? Yes? And while you're doing it, you should probably leave the ads unblocked and actually probably watch it like 2 or 3 times to get a good idea of what's going on. In all seriousness though, you don't really need to. While there are some elements that I do think have some importance, the point of this video is me doing that work for you, and relaying what threads exist between the issues that I found with the wizarding world, and the issues that I found with Hogwarts Legacy. And oh, did I find issues? A lot of them. The first major one being that Hogwarts Legacy was boring as hell. Like, I know the online left came out and made a huge deal about supporting Hogwarts Legacy being putting money into the back pocket of a person who is aggressively using that funding and prestige gained from being in the public eye to demonise and assault the rights of trans people across the UK because a pile of mould in her house told her to do it. I know that's an argument that got made, and was probably unconvincing really. I find people make a lot of leeway for things they enjoy or have nostalgia for, in not really considering the ramifications or impacts of them. But to be honest, you shouldn't have bought Hogwarts Legacy or played Hogwarts Legacy, because it's a fucking waste of $60 and 30 hours of your time. The combat is mediocre, feels very unimpactful, completely unbalanced, and doesn't really let you live the fantasy of casting spells, because it's more broken down into your bog standard action-adventure RPG spam, a la the recent Star Wars. The world is very uninteractive too. You are given very few tools or capabilities for engaging with it. The maps are boring to explore despite some very cool visual design choices, and the characters are there.
May I have my gobstones back?
You're right. You're better than me.
What? But you can't.
I guess. And don't even get me started on the RPG choices part of it. RPG has really collapsed as a whole genre, when you can have games like Baldur's Gate 3 that affords you this vast amount of dialogue options that vary how you play and who you get to play as, existing alongside games like Hogwarts Legacy, where you get to make 1 or 2 comments in each conversation that mean basically nothing, and don't feed into any greater expression of who you are role-playing as.
If I hadn't known how to cast it...
Like, it's redundant to have the category anymore, apparently, because you can pretty much lie about what you are selling the customer when you label it as an RPG. Yet, that's not what any of us are here for. I didn't make a 10-hour Harry Potter video talking about the bloody game mechanics of Wizards Unite or the filmmaking of Prisoners of Azkaban. No, you want lore. You want lore dumps, and you want me to explain how those lore dumps reveal some deep, dark truth about the wizarding world. Well, here it is. Hogwarts Legacy does nothing interesting or unique or to change what I'd already emphasized in that 10-hour video as the main big problem of the Wizarding World as a franchise and lived-in media landscape. And I know it sort of feels there like I'm giving away the game too early here and I should be kind of stringing you along and building to that, but I'm not gonna lie about it. And honestly, I want to bring it up early so that I can construct for you my argument as to why that's the case and why it sucks so much and makes it impossible to create anything good in the Harry Potter world going forwards. So the story. You're a fancy wizard with some fancy historical secret magic ancestry that makes you cooler and better and special at magic stuff due to that ancient magic connection, who gets dumped straight into the fire as a 5th year student after... I'm not actually sure what schooling you had before that point really, now that I think about it, but the fire that you are launched into is an evil goblin rebellion run by Ranrock, a goblin rebellion that seeks to replace the wizard-based racism of the Wizarding World with a goblin-based racism of the Wizarding World.
She, like all wizard kind, sought only to use you.
Having goblins be the dominant force and wizards be relegated to a controlled and maligned magical species, or just straight up wiped out. It's a tad odd, and we will get into that more in a second, but Ranrock aligns himself with Victor Rookwood, a dark wizard who leads a gang of criminals who like using magic to do crime stuff, and who initially worked with the goblins for money reasons, and then later on for just kind of generally sort of racist reasons around the ancient magic that is the centre of the story and how only he deserves to have it.
You would let goblins take what is rightfully ours?
What is this ancient magic, you might wonder? Well, it's a repository of hate and evil from a dark wizard who worked with one of Ranrock's ancestors to create a way of storing all the suffering and torment of other wizards for power, and that's how Ranrock found out about it. As for how this repository would have been useful for either of Ranrock's goals of goblin supremacy or Rookwood's goals of money, 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 it's not very clear, because in the final battle, Ranrock just uses it to turn into a gigantic old dragon, which you then just kill. You also get the very basic, very boring RPG choice here of either storing the remaining ancient magic and hiding it as a secret, which is the good ending because, as is clear, this is evil magic. Or you can try and take it into yourself and argue that you'll use it for good out in the world, which is the evil ending, despite the fact that the only really evil thing about it is that the magic is, as we just mentioned, evil magic, and therefore inherently evil. I mean, you get glowy red eyes, and your professor mentor who died tells you this is a bad idea, so those are sort of your clues. As I said, very limited ability to actually engage with the role-playing here, and that's because of the fact that all of Hogwarts Legacy suffers from its placement in the timeline, and the limited capability for it to actually contain any meaningful ramifications. Oh, also, you just totally get Rookwood and Ranrock killed, which instantly ends their rebellions and their gangs and completely neutralizes whatever they wanted to do. So it's very sprung upon you, and rushed through to the end in a way that didn't exactly feel rewarding for all the time invested in the story up till that point, which, considering everything else about Hogwarts Legacy, is, frankly, not that much of a surprise. But as I was saying, Hogwarts Legacy being set in the 1800s, and therefore before the canonical timeline of Fantastic Beasts and the main Harry Potter series, gets it basically boned, especially by virtue of being placed within Hogwarts and the physical location and area that we have a lot of familiarity with and learn a lot about from the rest of the franchise. They could never have really done any major changes or allowed you to have anything interesting happen, because then that would mess up all the other stuff that is supposed to happen in the future. Now, could this whole thing have just been declared an alternate timeline like a few of the Star Wars games do, and given the player a sense that they are able to seriously change the wizarding world through their actions? Probably. But it doesn't do that, because like pretty much all the entries into this franchise, the thing that keeps being maintained no matter what is the established status quo that J.K. Rowling set up and that never really gets properly challenged, either by the end of the entry or within that entry itself. Our heroes, our good endings, our positive outlooks are always established to be those who fight to keep things the way that they are, to ensure that stuff like the secrecy of magic is maintained, despite the fact that it is very clear that it is not an automatically good thing at all. Our heroes are the ones who fight against the evil goblin racists who want to cast down and wipe out wizards to create a goblin-dominant society. Those evil goblins who work alongside evil wizard racists whose motivations are financial, because money's also evil, and we all know how much those goblins care about and control money, am I right? J.K. Rowling?
Clever as they come, goblins, but not the most friendly of beasts. Best stay close.
I mean, that's how you wrote them. But this very thing ignores the valid and incredibly important motivating element behind goblins like Ranrock wanting to change how things are operating. Specifically, that the entire world is one that has wizards as the dominant species. Wizards as the ones with the absolute control over not just their own community, but all magical communities, where wizards have forced the various other magical species into either hiding or servitude-based roles to better serve the wizards who are very much on top.
Penny promises to work as hard as she can for such a kind new owner.
Am I saying that the goblins wanting to wipe out all wizards is a good thing and that they should do it? No. But it is strange how often the Harry Potter lore keeps showing that goblins and other magical species have absolutely valid reasons for wanting to be opposed to wizards, and then casts their motivations in a negative light by associating it with the worst personal interpretation and linking them to dark wizards, so that the goblin rebellions and goblin anti-wizard movements are always seen as villainous or foolish. Even our good goblin of the game, Lodgok, and don't worry, I will get into the character who Lodgok connects to in a little bit, don't you worry about me covering the awkwardly inserted trans character of this game, you know I can't miss him, but even Lodgok mirrors this bizarre attitude, wherein he agrees with the idea of the rebellion at the start, then learns that his brother Ranrock is doing evil and murdery stuff, and betrays Ranrock, only to get killed to prove how far Ranrock has fallen.
You are a traitor to our kind!
Imagine if there was a movement about the liberation of a group of people, and the dismantling of an oppressive system, and yet every time it gets mentioned and got written in, the only way that it appeared was in the most aggressive and extreme version of it. Ones that are designed to be unpalatable because if it succeeded and looked good, and if what it argued for was even remotely acceptable to the audience, then it would cause the whole status quo that system is built on to collapse and crumble and fall down. It's like the only thing we ever get to read about or see about Goblin Rebellions is the equivalent of the FBI's COINTELPRO on the Black Panthers. And it has to be that way in Hogwarts Legacy so that the boat doesn't get too shook, because it is that way in the future in Harry Potter and in Wizards Unite and in Fantastic Beasts, because to J.K. Rowling's franchise, the status quo is golden, and it can never be torn down and rebuilt, merely adjusted slightly.
You came today because you crave something new, something different.
Goblins can't become total equals to wizards. That would be crazy. House elves couldn't possibly be given their freedoms and allowed choice. All that would do would cause suffering. And so the wizards have to remain in their benevolent absolutism and benevolently choose how the other races get to live. For their own good, you understand. And it's that core motivation, that core of stagnant rot by which the wizarding world remains forced into a stillness with no development or serious ramifications for any of the major issues that get brought up, that makes a game like Hogwarts Legacy a failure at a story level. The Goblin Rebellion could have been an interesting challenge to wizard supremacy, that makes us question the world that our wizard is now a part of, and our role in protecting an upper class whose very existence is dependent upon the subordination and labour of those that they have subjugated for centuries through hoarding power to only their race. It could have you question those elements, face off against a villain who does despicable things and wants something that is ultimately too horrible to allow to happen, but whose motivation is one based in very real suffering and who kinda has a point. Instead of the cartoonish villainy that we deal with, it could have been an exploration of the flaws at the heart of the wizarding world. Flaws that we know don't get fixed or changed, and yet, instead, they just don't do anything.
That if you cannot get to the child, then you have no value to me.
But that's the same problem that keeps happening, that I keep seeing with Harry Potter. The mobile game made a villain out of a person who wanted to cast down the magical secrecy of wizards, because surely cooperation between muggles and wizards is better than segregation that's supported by the racists too. Fantastic Beasts returned to the same well that Harry Potter did, of having a super evil, genocidal, racist man be the enemy. And so we can't possibly think about the more general day-to-day evil that is allowed to happen in the wizarding world because of this grander threat of Grindelwald or Voldemort. And the new series coming out is just them repeating the films apparently, but stretching it out longer. Now, did a book series from 30 years ago that caused a film series from 20 years ago need a TV series doing the exact same thing again now?
Magic is not an escape from the world, Harry.
Well, I'm sure the answer to that from the company involved in J.K. Rowling is how much money can it possibly make for all of them? But my problem is that all this shows is much like the lore of the world it's based around. This entire franchise is stuck in inertia. There will be no interesting changes to the wizarding world. There will be no consequences of any of the stuff that got written into it. There will be no exploration of differing views and perspectives that might make us stop and realise how fucked all of this is. I mean, my god, imagine if we had got to play as a goblin, or a house elf, or a vampire, or a werewolf, or a centaur, or any of the other magical fucking beings. Shit, imagine if we had got to play a muggle who discovers the world and explores it. That would at least be something new and fun, and I know it doesn't fit into the power fantasy element, and I also know you're going to bring up Jacob from Fantastic Beasts, and in that case, think about what you've just done. Think about it. Jacob?
The Slytherin boys over there, they gave me these, they're delicious. Who wants one?
I never cared for cockroach clusters.
Jacob didn't challenge shit, and was just around as a fucking comedy sidekick character for Newt. As far as the power fantasy thing goes, I understand, that's a pretty important part for any game, but I'm talking about the entire franchise. Just give us something new to work with. And I have to assume that within this failure to really progress things, or to attempt to do interesting and unique versions of the wizarding world, sits a requirement. Whether it's from Warner Bros. Or J.K. Rowling, I do not know. That means no writers and no creators who come into the franchise are able to do much more than just repeat the same boring stories over and over again, and have the same resolutions. It will always be the wizards are cool and good, except for the bad wizards who use dark evil magic, and those who attempt to change the status quo through drastic means, whether for good or bad reasons, end up becoming those dark wizards, or working with dark magic, and so you have to stop them. I know, post the enlightened centrist Harry Potter meme, but it keeps becoming true, so it's less of a joke and more of just how things are. But that brings us to the one thing that I guess did change in Hogwarts Legacy. The one kind of major challenge to the status quo that was introduced and that represents a major first for the wizarding world. That's right, it's trans wizard time.
I shall let you know if I hear anything.
Thank you, Sirona.
You be well.
So, Sirona Ryan is a character that you meet during the game, and who is a tavern owner in Hogsmeade. She has a few quests that are linked to her that are... well, they aren't great side quests, honestly, but this entire game doesn't really have many good side quests, and her entirety of the trans stuff that we get from her is mostly just a comment early on about how Hogwarts and a few people took a bit longer to realise that she was really a witch and not a wizard.
Took them a second to realise I was actually a witch, not a wizard.
Because those are the gendered male/female things that the wizarding world uses instead of guy and girl. It's honestly not a lot of content, and I would argue that both the inclusion and the character are mixed at best for representation's sake. So, with the in-game stuff, I found it to be very awkward, considering the latest stuff that we have on trans people within the wizarding world and the franchise, i.e., nothing, except for J.K. Rowling making it clear that the Hogwarts Gryffindor towers have magical biocheckers that kick boys out of the girls' tower. And, you know, I mean, take that in context with her opinions and beliefs, and do what you will with that insert, but it was awkward because of how extremely positive Sirona Ryan's inclusion was. And I know Sirona is a classic Irish name, but much like Kingsley Shacklebolt being a black dude, having a trans woman be called Sirona Ryan is a tad... well, I mean, it's that meme all over again, isn't it? About Harry Potter names being bizarrely stereotypical and blatant about the group the person belongs to. But Sirona Ryan's quests kinda spend their whole time emphasizing how great she is, and how much all of her classmates love her and think fondly of her, and the introduction that we get to her is positive too, and it's like... I enjoy seeing positive trans representation as much as the next person, but it can come across a little whitewashed sometimes, especially if perhaps a game is trying its best to appease a crowd of people who might have some issues with buying it thanks to the massive bigot on the sidelines shouting stuff about trans people linked to the game. And that brings me to the other major problem that I have, which is that Sirona Ryan and her inclusion does feel like it was mostly just done to temper the issues that people who are trans, or who want to be trans allies, might have with Hogwarts Legacy. Especially considering that its inclusivity is done in such a vague manner within the game, but highly talked about within queer and leftist circles, to the degree that you can find no end of Reddit posts and comments from people who clearly didn't get this pushed at them, being confused as to why Sirona Ryan has a voice that they don't consider to be aligned with how she appears gender-wise. It's somehow both inclusion for us and not clear enough inclusion for the cis people to really notice it.
They're bullies. Plain and simple. Never tolerated them in my own life.
Which speaks a lot to how aggressively you have to actually do representation for it to count to quite a few people. But it's not all negativity here. Look, you know me. I love a little bit of giving props to things that I might not like where it's due. And Hogwarts Legacy did make the choice that I constantly support of having the trans character be voiced by a trans woman. Thumbs up! That's exactly what I argue for all the time, because we need to get us involved with these industries and give us the ability to be expressed and express ourselves through spaces. Despite the obvious concern I cannot reiterate enough of being involved in a franchise that is explicitly linked and forever linked economically and conceptually to an avowed and avid transphobe. Like, yes, get that bag, trans voice actress Rebecca Root, but also, this doesn't necessarily make the choice better.
And not everyone was as kind to me as the Sprottles.
And back on that not being better, there has been a discussion in a few trans spaces around the fact that her voice for Serona Ryan does seem to be a deeper voice than Rebecca Root's normal voice. And I don't just mean on pitch either, I'm talking resonance and weight of it. It's almost been made more masculine than how she normally sounds, and this is a point reiterated by the people over at Seattle Voice Labs, a well-known location that sells voice training to trans people, and who has a decade of experience with doing it.
There's a face I haven't seen before.
There's a face I haven't seen before.
And it does seem as the voice has been affected in some way, whether in post-production or during the recording, to make Serona seem more clearly trans via the voice. Something which sort of buys into a very odd stereotype of wanting people to know a person's transness by appealing to an idea that you can totally clock them, despite the fact that a lot of trans people have voices that don't sound like this at all, especially if they've put in time and money to training it. And also that the Harry Potter world has a spell and a potion that allows you to change how your voice sounds. Seriously, the Volubilis potion is a literal thing from both the Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince video game and the Harry Potter Magic Awakened video game. I don't know, it's just an odd way of doing things, and then not giving us any real explanation or clear discussion around trans things with Serona. And it's stuff like that which makes her whole inclusion feel a little lackluster, and as if it's merely designed to sate the woke crowd and the trans people who are mad about the blatant transphobia from J.K. Rowling and her funding from everything Harry Potter.
The dark arts of cancel culture have been no match for the magic of Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling.
So, yeah, that's my take on Hogwarts Legacy. It's just not good. It's bad on a bunch of levels, and it's indicative of a major problem with the franchise of Harry Potter and the Wizarding World, wherein nothing seems to ever really change, and we never get anything to challenge our perspectives or the view that we have on the way things operate, despite there being plenty of issues and things that could be used to illustrate that. It's trapped in a forever cycle of boring staleness, repeating the same stories with the same moral ideas, and it fails to ever consider its own flaws in a way that might allow it to grow. So, yeah, the game is just another nail in the coffin that I built in that 10-hour video I made, and further cements everything that I know is wrong here with the Wizarding World. And there we go. Obligation fulfilled. And fulfilled to a degree that I find satisfactory. Sure, this isn't a 5-hour video going over every single little detail from the game, but that's because it would have been boring as hell, and I would not have been able to write it all the way through. I tried, I got about an hour in and went, this just sucks.
That was very educational and extremely entertaining. Just kidding, it was boring as hell!
The point of the 10-hour Harry Potter video was never just to be 10 hours, it was that there was 10 hours worth of things that I wanted to discuss within it. I just wrote and the things flowed out of me. And the same just isn't true here. Hogwarts Legacy is, and will always be, nothing more than a footnote on a grander franchise's inevitable march into the oblivion of obscurity, as it continues to refuse to change or adjust or acknowledge the flaws that exist within its status quo, or introduce new and interesting ideas. There is a lesson in here, I am sure, about our current political climate, but for now, let me just say a huge thanks to my patrons, of whom those in the $5 category should be scrolling past the screen right now. If you want to join this illustrious list, you can find the link to my Patreon in the description below, and it is massively important to keeping this channel going, especially through the leaner months when my content just ain't hitting in the algorithm how I need it to for it to pay my bills, like food, power, rent, internet, cat, and transitioning magic. Surely there has to be transitioning based magic in the world of Harry Potter. I mean, come on, a writer somewhere out there for Warner. Do something with it and, really piss off J.K. Rowling. But yeah, this financial security is a massive deal for keeping my channel running, and for keeping me housed, which is also very important to ensuring that I continue to be able to make the videos, and also gives me a clear sign that people love what I do here enough to pay for it to continue. A thing which is a comfort whenever I start to question my place in the YouTuber ecosystem, and what I'm doing with my life when there are more talented and established creators out there. Creative jobs are kinda rough. There's not really a good indicator of where to go and what to do properly with it. You just kind of have to feel it out, and having an audience there to be part of that experience and that journey makes it all the more feasible and enjoyable. So yeah, a big thanks to my patrons, a big thanks to everyone who watched this video and who engaged with it in whatever way they were able to or felt like doing, and a big thanks to all of those who just like what I make. If you don't like what I make, I have no idea why you waited this long and heard this, but thanks for the ad revenue, I guess. I hope that you can leave a good critique of why you don't like what I do, and not just a rude, offensive comment that doesn't help anybody. But once more, thank you to everyone that has made it this far, and I hope that you all have a magical day. Or a non-magical day, seeing the kind of magical days that exist in the wizarding world. Have a regular, calm, normal day.